A renowned psychiatrist once documented something so unsettling that it fundamentally changed how we understand human nature. Through decades of clinical observation, he witnessed a transformation in certain individuals that defied everything psychology thought it knew about personality development. These weren't ordinary patients. They were what Sacred Patterns calls the silently powerful. The most compassionate souls harbor the greatest capacity for psychological warfare. Their gentleness isn't weakness, it's strategic restraint. What this doctor discovered about empathetic individuals will challenge everything you believe about human nature. For years, this psychiatrist treated patients who arrived at his clinic carrying invisible wounds. These individuals shared a disturbing commonality. They were emotional sponges, absorbing toxicity from everyone around them. Narcissistic parents, unfaithful partners, manipulative colleagues, these empaths had become human shock absorbers for society's dysfunction. But here's where the story takes a chilling turn. These patients weren't just enduring abuse. They were unconsciously documenting it. When asked about their relationships, instead of scattered emotional responses, they provided detailed psychological profiles of their abusers. They knew exactly which words would devastate their tormentors, which insecurities ran deepest, which fears kept them awake at night. The terrifying part, they had never weaponized this knowledge. Not once. Until something pushed them beyond their breaking point. These empaths weren't victims with diaries. They were strategists with war rooms waiting for activation. The psychiatrist realized he wasn't treating damaged minds. He was sitting across from dormant psychological masterminds. If you've ever felt like people severely underestimate your awareness of their true nature, comment below. I catalog everything. The doctor decided to test these patients' abilities. He brought colleagues into sessions without providing any background information. Within moments, these empaths could pinpoint childhood wounds, relationship patterns, and professional insecurities with surgical precision. Their accuracy consistently exceeded 95%. What made the psychiatrist's hands tremble as he documented these findings? These individuals weren't psychic. They had simply developed pattern recognition skills that operated at superhuman levels. What others dismissed as intuition, they processed as pure data. Their brains had evolved into sophisticated behavioral analysis machines. Every micro-expression registered, every vocal inflection decoded, every defensive gesture cataloged. They weren't feeling more, they were processing exponentially faster. Society had convinced these gifted individuals that their perceptions were flawed. Every time they identified deception, manipulation, or hidden agendas, they were labeled as paranoid or overly suspicious. They learned to silence their inner knowing, to question their observations, to apologize for seeing through facades. But truth doesn't evaporate because you stop acknowledging it. It accumulates like psychological pressure in a sealed container. And in these cases, decades of suppressed awareness had reached critical mass. The psychiatrist made a revolutionary discovery. These empaths weren't losing their sanity from excessive feeling. They were going insane from being told their feelings were invalid. What appeared to be nervous breakdowns were actually psychological breakthroughs. He identified a consistent trigger across every case. The transformation never happened gradually. It erupted in one explosive moment of clarity. The catalyst was Always profound betrayal by someone the empath had completely trusted and protected. Discovering infidelity, financial deception, emotional manipulation. The devastating part wasn't the betrayal itself, it was realizing they had seen every warning sign and ignored them all. These patients initially responded exactly as expected. They absorbed the pain silently. They blamed themselves. They worked harder to be perfect partners, children, or friends. Then came what Sacred Patterns calls the awakening moment, when pattern recognition finally overwhelmed the need to believe the best in people. Most observers expected emotional chaos. The abusers certainly anticipated tears, screaming, or complete psychological collapse. They had prepared for dramatic meltdowns. What happened instead terrified everyone involved. The empaths became unnaturally calm. This was the moment when emotional intelligence merged with analytical precision. The transformation the psychiatrist witnessed was both beautiful and terrifying. These individuals didn't attack. They didn't rage. They simply began speaking truth with clinical accuracy. They revealed every observation they had cataloged and silently endured, not with cruelty, with surgical precision. Like doctors identifying diseased tissue before removing it. This wasn't revenge. It was clarity. These empaths were finally using their gift of complete perception not to excuse behavior, but to expose it with devastating accuracy. The ancient wisdom proved true. There is no fury like someone who has finally learned to trust their own perceptions. Absolutely. The psychiatrist realized this pattern wasn't vindictive behavior. It was shadow integration, the moment when someone stops denying the parts of themselves they were taught to suppress. The empath's shadow wasn't malevolent. It was their silenced intelligence, their dismissed intuition, their denied strength. When they finally integrated these aspects, they achieved what he termed psychological completeness. Here's what made these cases so disturbing. The transformation was permanent. These patients never regressed into people-pleasing patterns. They didn't apologize for their newfound boundaries. They never second-guessed their perceptions again. They had become empaths who could no longer be manipulated. The changes extended beyond psychology into complete life reconstruction. Within months, they strategically exited abusive relationships. They severed contact with toxic family members without emotional drama. They rebuilt their existence on their own terms. The psychiatrist observed them becoming what he called selectively empathetic, still deeply caring but strategically protective of where that compassion flowed. The most unsettling aspect was how their presence affected others. People who had previously walked all over them suddenly felt uncomfortable around them. They couldn't articulate why. These empaths weren't aggressive or hostile, but everyone sensed something fundamental had shifted. Manipulative. Individuals could instinctively sense when their usual tactics wouldn't work. They avoided these transformed empaths like predators avoiding apex predators. The awakened empath didn't need to announce their power, others could feel it instinctively. Comment if people started treating you completely differently when you developed psychological boundaries. They felt the shift before I spoke it. The psychiatrist's fascination extended beyond professional curiosity. He recognized something familiar in their transformation because he himself was highly sensitive. He understood the empath's journey from personal experience, the pain of seeing what others couldn't perceive, feeling what others wouldn't acknowledge. These cases forced him to confront a disturbing Question: what happens when empaths stop being society's emotional shock absorbers and start using their gifts strategically? He spent years following these transformed patients post-integration. What he discovered kept him awake at night. These individuals had become extraordinarily successful. Their businesses thrived because they could identify clients' real needs before articulation. Their new relationships flourished because they could spot emotional predators immediately. Their decisions were flawless because they trusted their intuitive intelligence completely. The chilling realization? These empaths hadn't become less empathetic. They had become perfectly empathetic, which meant they were also perfectly strategic. They could manipulate others as easily as they had once been manipulated. They understood human psychology at a level that made them nearly omnipotent in social situations. Here's what truly terrified the psychiatrist. These transformed empaths chose not to use this power destructively. They could have systematically destroyed everyone who had hurt them. Instead, they simply removed toxic people from their lives and moved forward. He realized he had witnessed the birth of the integrated empath, someone with both the sensitivity to feel everything and the wisdom to choose what deserved their energy. His private notes revealed his amazement. "I have observed something beautiful and terrible. These individuals have become what every manipulator fears most, someone who can see through them completely, but no longer needs anything from them. If you've reached the point where you can read people instantly, but no longer crave their approval. Right, I see through you, but I'm done needing you." These transformations created ripple effects throughout entire family systems. Dynamics collapsed not because these individuals destroyed them, but because they stopped enabling dysfunction. Alcoholic relatives were forced to confront their addictions without empaths as emotional dumping grounds. Depressed family members had to find alternative sources of validation. Manipulative siblings could no longer use these transformed empaths as psychological punching bags. The psychiatrist realized how powerful awakened empaths truly were. Their transformation forced everyone around them to evolve or reveal their authentic nature. Healthy people grew stronger from their example. Toxic individuals exposed themselves through desperate attempts. He observed what sacred patterns calls the mirror effect. These transformed individuals didn't need to actively confront dysfunction anymore. Their presence reflected issues back with uncomfortable clarity. Manipulators couldn't stand being around them. They felt exposed, seen through, unable to operate their usual psychological games. Meanwhile, authentic people felt safer with these empaths than ever before. The awakened empath becomes a living truth detector, not through judgment, but through pure presence. The most disturbing discovery came when the psychiatrist introduced these transformed patients to others in his practice. Within minutes, they could identify core psychological wounds and the exact therapeutic approach needed. Their diagnostic accuracy surpassed his decades of training. This created an ethical dilemma that haunted him. If empaths could develop this level of psychological insight naturally, what did that mean for professional psychology? He began quietly studying other empaths, developing what Sacred Patterns calls the Integration Observation Protocol. This framework wasn't traditional therapy. It was psychological documentation of how empaths naturally developed warrior consciousness after severe betrayal. He identified consistent stages across cases. First stage, recognition. Empaths learn to identify their suppressed shadow aspects, not just anger, but intelligence, strength, and the right to boundaries. They stopped pathologizing their perceptions and started trusting their emotional intelligence as the sophisticated data processing system it actually was. Second stage, integration. The psychiatrist watched empaths merge their light and shadow aspects into authentic completeness. They became individuals who could show incredible kindness to those who deserved it, and ruthless precision with those who didn't. Third stage, application. Integrated empaths learn to use their emotional intelligence strategically, not just defensively. They became psychological architects, people who could read, influence, and navigate human systems with supernatural precision. These transformed empaths could no longer be victimized because they saw manipulation approaching from vast distances and neutralized it before it took root. They didn't just heal themselves, they became immune to psychological abuse while maintaining their capacity for genuine love and connection. The final stage was the natural return to service. Integrated empaths didn't become cold or disconnected. They became selectively generous with their gifts. They used their abilities to help other empaths transform, creating networks of psychologically resilient individuals. The psychiatrist's work with these cases created effects that continue reverberating. Today, he realized empaths weren't mentally ill, they were evolutionarily advanced individuals living in systems designed to exploit their gifts. He began seeing empathic sensitivity not as a disorder requiring cure, but as a psychological capability, requiring understanding and protection. He also recognized something concerning. In wrong circumstances, these abilities could be devastating. An empath who integrated their shadow without proper ethical grounding could become extremely manipulative. He developed the ethical integration model, documenting how awakened empaths naturally channeled their powers toward healing rather than harm. His case files on these transformations remain closely guarded research. He knew that if the wrong people learned to deliberately trigger empath transformation, it could be weaponized. He scattered observations across multiple private journals, never publishing complete findings during his lifetime. His final notes reveal something beautiful. These individuals lived as what Sacred Patterns describes as balanced warriors people, capable of incredible gentleness with those who earned it and implacable strength against those who threatened it. They became templates for humanity's next evolutionary step, people who could feel everything without being destroyed, see everything without becoming cynical, and love deeply without losing themselves. The psychiatrist's last observation about these transformed empaths. They proved that the empath's journey is not from sensitivity to numbness, but from unconscious absorption to conscious choice. They became not less empathetic, but perfectly empathetic. He left one final insight for future psychologists. Never underestimate someone who has learned to trust their own perceptions completely. The awakened empath represents psychology's most powerful evolution. Comment if you've learned to trust your intuition absolutely. I no longer doubt what I perceive and feel. His observations about awakened empaths proved prophetic in ways even he couldn't imagine. Modern research confirms what his cases demonstrated. Empaths who undergo shadow integration become psychologically invincible. They can't be gaslighted because they trust their perceptions absolutely. They can't be manipulated because they see emotional gains before they fully form. They can't be broken because they've already been to the bottom and emerged stronger. Here's what makes these cases studies eternally relevant. Every empath will face their transformation moment, the betrayal so profound it forces them to choose between remaining a victim or becoming sovereign. The question isn't whether the empath will snap. It's whether they'll integrate their shadow consciously, like these documented cases, or let it consume them destructively. Research revealed that most empaths, when pushed to their breaking point, choose integration. They don't become cruel, they become precise. They don't lose their hearts, they gain backbones. The transformed empath becomes love with boundaries, someone who can care deeply while protecting themselves absolutely. The final insight about these cases still resonates through psychology circles today. These individuals didn't become different people. They became who they always were beneath the conditioning. Every empath carries within them the potential to become psychologically untouchable. It just takes the right catalyst, usually betrayal, to force that transformation. The empath's greatest tragedy isn't their sensitivity. It's how long they wait to honor it properly. Remember where we started. The psychiatrist's documentation of a psychological pattern so disturbing he called it the most terrifying transformation in human nature. These weren't isolated cases. They represented a fundamental truth about empathic psychology. The research revealed something that still makes psychologists uncomfortable. Empaths aren't naturally victims. They're naturally powerful. Society just teaches them to suppress that power for the sake of acceptability. When empaths finally snap, they're not breaking, they're awakening to abilities they possessed all along. The case files reveal the truth that manipulators don't want you to know. The kindest people are often the strongest people, because kindness without strength enables dysfunction. The awakened empaths documented represent evolution in action individuals who can feel everything and choose everything with complete consciousness. Decades of studying patients who seem gentle and broken until something inside them snapped proved that the empath's journey isn't about becoming less sensitive, it's about becoming consciously sensitive. And consciousness transforms victims into forces of nature. The most beautiful part of these findings: these transformed empaths never lost their capacity for love. They just learned to love themselves as fiercely as they once loved others. If you're an empath reading this, remember the essential discovery. Your sensitivity isn't your weakness, it's your weapon. And the day you learn to wield it consciously is the day you become truly powerful. Not dangerous to innocent people, but dangerous to those who would exploit your gifts. That's exactly what the world needs more of. Empaths who know their worth, trust their perceptions, and refuse to dim their light for anyone's comfort. The research left us with this question: not whether empaths will transform, but whether they'll do it consciously or let life force it upon them. Comment below. I choose conscious transformation. If you're ready to become the integrated empath these cases documented, because the world doesn't need more broken empaths. It needs more awakened ones. And research proves that transformation isn't just possible, it's inevitable. The empath will snap. The only question is, will you direct that power, or will it direct you? Thanks for watching Sacred Patterns. See you in the next dimension of consciousness.